The following contains spoilers for Persona 3 Portable. Viewer discretion is advised. Just so we're clear, I am biased. I am so biased. Minako, Hamuko, the female Persona 3 protag, was the first protagonist I played in the Persona series. And honestly, if I played as Minato my first time around, I probably wouldn't have stuck around for long. Although, to be fair to our blue emo boy, Persona 3 Portable's FeMC was written after Persona 4, and the writers really hit their stride as far as social links go by this point. But I love the FeMC, and I relate to her, and she gets so much hate. You're not canon. You're too happy. Shinji should be dead, and I just can't relate to a female protagonist. In this video, I'm going to challenge all these points and more. That is not to say I'm absolutely correct, but it is more so to bring to the table a more fleshed out reason why I love this character from both a player standpoint and a writer standpoint. And if you like my writing, hey, why not support the channel on Patreon? You can have early access to what I'm working on, behind the scenes pictures, blog posts, and even some scripts to videos. My Patreons are the reason I'm able to keep making content, so thank you. The link is in the description below, but as always, this is completely optional. You can also help by liking this video, commenting what you think below, and sharing the video with your friends. Now, let's talk about the FeMC. FeMC was originally written as a different perspective to veteran players of Persona 3 Portable, and is voiced by the lovely Laura Bailey. As she is a different perspective, she is not what people would call canon. However, I do seek to challenge the fact that she is non-canonical. According to our dear friend Wikipedia, in fiction, canon is the material accepted as officially part of the story in the fictional universe of that story. Now, you may be saying, well, Minako is not officially part of the story in the fictional universe of that story. And to that I say, SMT Timeline. Look at this fan timeline. Look at it. Persona is a spin-off of SMT. It is an alternate reality. Therefore, all of Persona is non-canonical by this definition. But it's not, is it? It's an alternative reality. But the universe of SMT has proven on numerous occasions that there are places outside of the timelines that are separate from a specific game. Although the deviations are not part of the story in that timeline, in one universe, the protagonist got 2 X chromosomes, and in another, they got 1 X and 1 Y. One sperm cell of difference, since the sperm is what determines the additional chromosome. As an aside, in Persona 4 Ultimax, Margaret refers to the guest and Elizabeth. After Persona 3 Portable was released, in the Japanese version of this, it was changed from a male term of guest to a gender-neutral term for guest. The Velvet Room attendants exist in the Velvet Room, which is outside of the current guest's reality, although is a reflection of that guest's consciousness. What I'm getting at is there's nothing to infer that this cannot be another timeline split. If SMT can have 20 million, why can't the subsect of Persona have additional timelines? In fact, it does. It's implied that every bad ending is still as legitimate an ending as the good ending, meaning that this is a timeline split. In one scenario, someone makes a decision. In another, they make a different decision. This is also a theoretical concept of alternative realities in real life, but that's a subject for another... never. I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole. So while Minako is not canon to that specific story, and subsequently the stories that follow since they're in the same universe, although I don't think any of the Easter eggs hidden in Persona 4 or Persona 5 show the protagonist from the other games. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure they don't. That doesn't mean it cannot be canon to SMT in general. To this, I contradict with, you're too sad. Not really, that's not my argument. Rather, I think this is because of 2 reasons. The first is gender norms, which I know is a touchy subject, but you, dear viewers, are always far more mature than I give the internet credit to, and that makes me unbelievably happy. So when I first played through, I found myself self-inserted into the character. There were dialogue options I actually felt I would say in real life. It wasn't that the character was female. I mean, I related pretty well to male protagonists in other games. It was that the writing had a certain something I identified with. And then I read this article published on Kotaku that talked about how gender norms changed how the author, Lee Alexander, played through the game. Alexander states, early in the game, tension over who should be the group's leader becomes more than a simple power struggle that it was in the original. It's an all too familiar situation for women who want to be in charge. Once again, I felt the clash between the need to be assertive and the desire to make everyone happy. Isn't that the conflict many women claiming positions of power often face? It also feels far less natural for me to eschew the empathetic or apologetic dialogue options when dealing with a character that requires me to respond in a tough or cold way to gain approval. And honestly, this resonated with me. It is difficult in a lot of general population groups to take control as a leader who is female. No, not everyone is horrible to female leaders. Yes, there are female leaders and maybe your boss is female. But it is a trend that is annoying, and as you're exposed to it over and over for years on end, it does get tiring and frustrating. There is this need to be positive as a leader at all times. And although there is something to be said about being a more compassionate leader, it's also stressful when you want to be, human. It's something that's taught in society, and it's something you can't quite get away from. And I think the writers of Persona 3 sought to make that commentary deliberately. Why is it different playing as a female? Because you're raised to uphold female ideals. And take Junpei. He doubts your skills as a leader, but in this version, because you're a female. He isn't a bad guy, especially with getting to know him through Social Link. You realize he does have a lot of respect for women and is a great friend. But he's still a product of the society he was brought up in. He's threatened by the fact that you're a female and are stronger than him. This goes against what his ideals were taught, especially with an abusive father. But he's not a bad person, and the game goes out of its way to show you that. To show that just because we all have prejudices that we should challenge and we are sometimes weak to them, it doesn't mean we're bad people. We just have to teach ourselves to look outside that. And that's a strength of character that a lot of people are too ashamed to embrace. Also, I feel immensely guilty about being actually genuinely mean or cold to anyone, so I can relate to responding with happy answers. The second reason she is happy has to do with the game's theme of existentialism. Now, as stated in my previous Minato video, existentialism is the concept of embracing mortality. Embracing, but not dreading. Hence, I will. But look at FeMC's character design. In her hair are pins that form the Roman numeral 22. This is the number for the Fool of the Tarot, but unlike the number 0, 22 is the Fool at the end of their journey. That is to say, Minako is the character that has accepted her mortality. She isn't brooding, she supports the other characters and still learns from them, because she has come to terms with what Minato spends his game exploring, and she wants to appear strong, so she tries to uphold the group's morale. She knows what might happen, but has already accepted it, so tries to keep the group from spiraling while they explore their own mortality. Which leads me to... For the theme of the main game, yes. Shinji represents the actual threat that's on the line. He's troubled for a multitude of reasons. His story is an allegory for substance abuse to treat his emotional issues, and overall makes the main cast question about death. In this game, since it seeks to show a different perspective than the mainline game, it is trying to show another way that Minako is the Fool's journey completed, and has already embraced being the Messiah. Shinji stays on the brink of death the entire game, still emphasizing the danger that is ahead, but when you see him again at the end, if you play through New Game Plus, it is in your own final moments before becoming a seal. It makes your sacrifice feel larger. You giving up your life allows Shinji the opportunity to wake up and enjoy life again. He holds on because you showed him what it was like to have a close relationship to someone again. And frankly, that didn't need to be romantic. You teach him to care for someone even though we all die anyway. This is a different perspective, but it's another question that the writers want us to think about. And as an aside, I do love the concept of being romantically involved with Ryoji. Ferris refers to you as his darling, and it's creepy and strange, but it's also endearing. While the concept that Minato has death inside him, it's almost as though Minako's soulmate was death itself. Her love was for her destiny, and remains as a seal in an almost embrace. This one probably irritates me the most. I understand not relating to this protagonist. Trust me, there are protagonists I don't resonate with in many games I play, but a protagonist's gender should not prevent you from relating. The sheer number of male protagonists outweigh female protagonists, and we still find ways to relate to them and identify with them. But there's a concept in filmmaking that a movie is gender neutral if there's a male protagonist, but is a chick flick if there's a female protagonist, as females have a tendency to be able to relate to male protagonists more than male are to female. Now this is a generalization, it's not the hard and fast rule. Not to mention it skates over any genders in between and anyone who's not cisgendered. But I wonder if Hollywood execs ever stopped and thought, hey, maybe females relate to male characters because we're forced to do so. Male characters are often written with more depth and are more represented, so we relate to their stories. But we put in the work to do so. We work to put ourselves in their shoes, which is not a bad thing to do, but that doesn't mean that only women should learn those skills to do so. Again, not saying that only women do, just as a big, broad stroke that obviously doesn't cover everyone. And if you do not relate to this protagonist, that is fine. You are not going to relate to everyone. But saying you just don't relate to female protagonists in general, and therefore there shouldn't be one, just comes off as bratty. Like, you have 5 male protagonists in the series. Can we have our 2? And the other is a retelling of a story that already had a male character. Atlas succeeds in this retelling because they wrote a female character that is a character, not a fan service, one-dimensional being that is so common. And I know I might get hate for this, and I'll be called a crazy feminist, and what have you, and I'm indoctrinating people into the church of feminism. But I want to emphasize the fact that the majority of points I brought up were more or less just facts. They aren't attacking people for being a product of the society they brought up in. But it's also pretty blindsided to just ignore things that are problematic, especially in a game that does a good job at trying to discuss these topics responsibly, and at times far better than they did in Persona 4. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like, and leave a comment if you want, and subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks!